the former president and the fight he's having with E. Jean Carroll. That's bubbling to a boiling point right about now. Anyways, Jim Santelle in the 5 o'clock hour. But let me tell you, I never did like the former governor of the state of Wisconsin. It was a little personal. We always claim never personal, only politics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Unless you mean the wanker. I always felt a little personal with that guy.
Yeah.
Now, he made a dumb but possibly true statement recently. And PolitiFact Wisconsin picked up on it. And this guy hasn't been PolitiFacted. I mean, with frequency, when he was the governor, he would be false and pants on fire. But he does seemingly, I like to use a term I made up, he likes to split the infinitive. And in this case, he's mostly true, even though he's still the wanker. PolitiFact Wisconsin reporting on the former gubernator. Here's what Scotty Wanker said. Every pro-life governor up for election in November won by a large margin.
Say that one more time.
Every pro-life governor up for election in November won by a large margin.
Wanker.
Man, this guy, for once, we got to hand it to him. I agree.
Now, Tony Evers, I would point out right from the top, before we even get into the body of the PolitiFact, Tony Evers won re-election here as well. He is anything but what Wanker would describe as pro-life. In fact, I would say, truth be known, none of these Republican governors are pro-life. They're pro-birth. But I don't think they rate the veracity of that part of the statement. Let's jump in.
Yeah.
Yes, governors who oppose abortion did well in the midterms, but so did governors who feel the opposite. A politician Wisconsinites will remember well for doing some reflecting as the new year dawned about the results of November 8th, 2022 midterm elections. That's former gubernator Scotty Walker, who led the state from 2011 until early 2019, and now serves as the president of Young America's Nazi Foundation. Young Americans Foundation, a conservative youth organization. They're all tied into the Reaganite, the Reagan Ranch, and all that stuff. In a January 5th, 2023 opinion piece in the Washington Times, Wanker mused about governors who have opposed abortion winning second terms in Iowa, Ohio, Florida, Texas, New Hampshire, and a smattering of other states, many of which have strict laws on the books limiting the procedure. He argued that voters wanted leadership on the issue and that governors who delivered such leaderships have shown you could be pro-life and win. So Wanker's takeaway from the midterms, this red wave that never developed, is be pro-life and win.
Man, that's so on brand for him too. Get out your political almanac, flip through, find out if it's even possible.
Ebone Walker had made the same point a few days earlier on Twitter, writing January 1st, 2023, every pro-life governor up for election in November won by a large margin. But PolitiFact asks, is he right? Let's check it out. Abortion opponents performed well, but so did abortion rights supporters. You know who did really well in the midterms? Frickin' incumbents.
Yeah.
Of course, he didn't say incumbent governors did really well in the midterms. He's one of the few governors I can remember recently, incumbents, that frickin' lost in the midterms. This is the 2018 midterms, but you were a sitting governor that lost, Scott Walker. You went against the grain, and you were pro-life. But let me read a little more from PolitiFact. A spokesperson for Walker pointed to a tweet thread that the former governor that gives us a starting point. We've cross-checked the vote totals using Political's gubernatorial election results page, tracking only incumbents which pertain to his claim. So anyways, Wyoming, Mark Gordon won big. Tennessee, Bill Lee won big. Alabama, KIV won big. Ohio, Mike DeWine won fairly big. South Dakota, Kristi Noem, 62%. Idaho, Brad Little, 60%. Florida Gubernator Ron DeSantis, he's going to run for president soon, 59.4%. And Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, about 58%, all pro-life, according to Wanker, and all won, relatively handily in the midterms. Now, how one defines a large margin, of course, can differ from person to person. Let's not forget, Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy won by 50.3%. That ain't exactly a big margin, but he was an incumbent.
Yeah.
He was what Wanker would describe as pro-life, and he won re-election by a glorious margin of almost 0.5%.
What a landslide.
So Walker is generally on point. The governors who have opposed abortion did well in November's election, but he leaves out a bit of critical context. He often did. Candidates who oppose abortion lost too, meaning governors who support abortion rights did well, including in swing states. Let's start here in the Badger State, where Democratic Governor Tony Evers beat his Republican opponent, Tim Michels. You remember that guy, very unpalatable, to secure a second term. And Michels took a hardline stance on abortion, saying repeatedly he agreed with the 1849 Wisconsin law banning the procedure in most cases. In Evers' first term, the governor blocked several pieces of legislation aiming to curtail abortion access, filed a lawsuit to overturn the state's abortion ban, and made reproductive freedoms a centerpiece of his re-election campaign. That's part of why I voted for him. A similar story was true in Kansas, where Democratic Governor Laura Kelly held on over a Republican challenger who backed a failed measure to restrict abortion in the state. That was the first sort of tell that it wasn't going to be a red wave. The Kansas referendum. In bluer states like California, Minnesota, and Colorado, governors who support abortion rights were seeing the same sort of wide margin wins as anti-abortion governors Wanker cited. Abortion politics have long, this is a quote from Larry Sabato, abortion politics have long suggested that the side angrier about the current state of reproductive policy puts a higher priority on the abortion issue in determining who to vote for. For decades after the Roe v. Wade decision, it was the anti-abortion side that was angrier, Sabato said. But in election cycles following Roe v. Wade's overturn, the pro-choice side benefited, especially in competitive races.
And they went hard. I mean, it's almost impossible not to benefit with the stance they took. It was extreme, hardly addresses.
So they gave him a mostly true.
Sure.
But of course, he misses all the context, and he's just picking the examples that makes his case, and that's why I call him the Wanker. More Devil's Advocates, your grievances heard here.
But I'd like to make some of the money back that I spent.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Warning, listening to the Devil's Advocates may expose you to opposing views.
We mentioned, inflation is going to be an issue. Let me ask you this. What would you like to see Donald Trump do if you were here? What would you suggest Biden do to address the inflationary pressures we're facing right now?
Well, I can't tell you that because that would be something you could counter and defeat Trump with, or the Republican Party. So tell you.
You think Trump's taking strategy from you on talk radio, Lou?
I mean, you're no Kid Rock, Lou.
Follow the Devil's Advocates on Facebook and Twitter.
Here's today's STEM tip. Don't throw out that old plastic bottle. Repurpose it by turning it into an awesome terrarium. Just fill it with sand, pebbles, soil, and your favorite plant. It'll grow sealed right in its own ecosystem. Learn more at She Can STEM. A message from the Ad Council.
Weather brought to you by the Joint Chiropractic, making routine chiropractic care affordable and convenient. Start the new year right with a 10-month wellness plan and get 2 months free. Visit us at any of our 4 Madison area locations. No appointment needed, open evenings and weekends.
Here's your Devil Radio forecast. Lows around 21. Tonight, under overcast skies, northwesterly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Daytime highs approaching 36. Tomorrow, partly cloudy. Lows dip down to about 28. Tomorrow night, overcast skies. Overcast skies Sunday with highs around 40. 43, chance for scattered showers Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 26 degrees.
The number of the day tickles my spleen. The number of the day is 13.
I don't know if you know the Devil's Advocates, but the show is kind of a big deal.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show, the Friday the 13th edition. Evan, we barely even noted it. If it weren't for Jeff, now I'm a little spooked. Something bad could happen to me.
Jason's coming around.
Well,
Ooh.
CEO of Civic Media, Sage Weil, is coming around. He'll join me in studio in just a bit here in the Solidarity Realty Studios in my hometown, Madison, Wisconsin. Sage and I have that in common. We're both from here now. And a little bit later in the Happy Hour, we got former U.S. Attorney James Santelle, host of a wonderful morning product. You're going to want to tune in each Saturday morning. And in case you're busy, you can catch him Sunday morning as well, the replay. But he originates starting with WAUK, 9 to 11 a.m. each Saturday morning. Morning cannoli. He's going to want to tune in for Jim tomorrow. But I want to come back to the wanker for just a minute. This stupid statement he makes. Well, any pro-life GOP governor that was an incumbent in the midterms won by a wide margin. Of course, unless they didn't. And he got it mostly true because he cherry-picked this. But, causation and correlation are not really the same thing in this case.
Capital I on incumbent in that sentence. I mean, that's it.
Well, here's another point I would make. I think that the overturning of Roe v. Wade, relatively speaking to the elective cycle, has been disastrous for Republicans. And of course, Wanker makes just the opposite point. We should be more stridently pro-birth, pro-life, as he would say, but pro-birth. But of course, here in Wisconsin, we've got a spring election coming up. And we have the balance, the soul of the Wisconsin Supreme Court on the ballot. And I think that abortion, whether or not Robin Voss and these very strategic and shrewd, air quotes, Republicans on the legislative side, they're going to de-emphasize the issue of women's reproductive rights by passing narrow exceptions for rape and incest. So women can, have abortions in the case of rape or incest legally. But of course, there are no abortion providers left in the state of Wisconsin to perform that procedure for you.
Oh, it's almost too, it's too cute, too cute by half. It's exactly what I imagine them doing now.
Well, I can't imagine our female friends and those that love them have forgotten that women have had their reproductive rights, their abortive rights stripped from them. This 50-year plus precedent has been overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. But of course, here in the great state of Wisconsin, what we thought was a progressive state, we're being governed by an 1849 law. And as mentioned, Tony Evers is seeking to overturn the law. I don't know if that's going to be effective with the current makeup of the court.
Yeah.
But of course, we could see a dramatic change in the makeup of the court.
Fingers
if it
crossed.
shifts from 4-3 conservative to 4-3 quote unquote liberal, all bets are off on abortion, on gerrymandering, on a lot of different issues. So first and foremost, you better vote on April 4th. I would recommend voting for whichever liberal comes through the primary, Everett Mitchell or Janet Protasewicz. They're both currently judges. Either one's going to be better than Jennifer Dorrell, the celebrity, I almost said celebrity chef, celebrity judge from Waukesha County, and Dan Kelly, the former Wanker appointee to the court that got crushed by Karofsky by 163,000 votes.
Wow.
Let me give you a little update. Our friends, urbanmilwaukee.com, they're re-reporting what Wisconsin Public Radio first put out there. Jenny Peak with this piece. Former Wisconsin abortion provider opens clinic in Rockford. Well, women's reproductive care is much like legalized recreational marijuana at this point.
Sure.
It's a 45-minute to the border sort of car ride.
The grass is literally greener.
A former Wisconsin abortion provider has opened a new clinic across state lines in hope of filling a gap for patients who are no longer able to receive the procedure in the state of Wisconsin. Dr. Dennis Christensen opened the Rockford Family Planning Center last week and has since treated a handful of people from both Illinois and Wisconsin. Prior to opening the center, Christensen ran a now-shuttered abortion clinic in Milwaukee and spent his career as an OBGYN in both Madison and Milwaukee. Rockford Family Planning Center Administrator Meg Larkin said the clinic offers medication abortions up to 11 weeks gestation. She said the Rockford Clinic, about 70 miles from Madison, gives people in South Central Wisconsin a closer option. It's also a little closer for them to come here than it is to go in through to the Chicago area, she said, adding in a way to make sure women get what they need. Here's another quote from Larkin. When a woman finds out that she's pregnant, and maybe it's about a health issue, maybe it's about an abusive relationship they're in, they should have the right to say, okay, this is not the time for me. I need to do something. And we're there to help them get what they need, Larkin said. Larkin had previously worked with Christensen at his abortion clinic in Rockford before it closed about a decade ago. Larkin came out of retirement to join him at the news center. He called me in June and said it doesn't look good for Roe v. Wade, Larkin recalled. And so he said, would you like to come out of retirement and open a clinic with me in Rockford? And I said, sign me up. For her, ensuring people have access to care they need made returning to work an easy decision. I wasn't ready to quit before, and I have a second chance to do the work that I love more than anything I've done in the 71 years of my life, Larkin said. And when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade, it left the legality of abortion up to individual states. As I've mentioned, in Wisconsin, that put in effect a pre-Civil War abortion ban, making the procedure illegal in almost all cases. And abortion remains legal in Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota, while some states have attempted to make crossing state lines for an abortion illegal. Lawyer Diane Walsh told Wisconsin Watch that Wisconsin has no such law. Not currently, doesn't mean Republicans wouldn't seek one. And before the Rockford Clinic opened, the closest options for patients seeking abortions was from the southern part of Wisconsin was Waukegan, Illinois, and Chicago. And for other people in the state, Planned Parenthood clinics in Rochester, Minnesota, and Minneapolis are the closest options across state lines. Come back, Devil's Advocates Radio Show. The CEO of Civic Media, our friend Sage Weil. More Devil's Advocates, TGIF.
Skywalker has failed Wisconsin.
You know, they can go suck lemons.
I find your lack of Devil Radio 92.7 disturbing. Do not fail me again.
ABC News, I'm Rena Roy. The death toll from severe storms that raked across Alabama and Georgia has risen to at least 9. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp.
Multiple tornadoes across the state. The damage is, literally statewide.
Among the dead in Georgia, a 5-year-old child. On the heels of the appointment of a special counsel to investigate the presence of classified documents at President Biden's Delaware home and former Washington office, the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee says it wants access to documents related to the investigation. Former President Trump's organization was ordered by a New York City judge to pay the maximum penalty of a $1.6 million fine for what prosecutors allege more than a decade of tax evasion. A new federal rule will tighten regulation of stabilizing braces that gun owners can use to convert pistols into short-barreled rifles. Now, gun owners that use them will have to comply with rules that apply to rifles. This is ABC News.
From Columbus to Fox Lake, Devil Radio on WTTN 1580 AM is essential radio to get you through your day.
For Civic Media, I'm Terry Bell with this news. Therapists, social workers, and counselors in Wisconsin can resume trying to change clients' gender identities and sexual orientations. The Evers administration banned conversion therapy in 2020, but Republicans who control the Joint Committee for Review of Administrative Rules lifted the ban yesterday. LGBTQ rights advocates say conversion therapy has been debunked and is even harmful. A Republican member of the Wisconsin Elections Commission says he stands by what he said in an email praising lower voter turnout among Black and Hispanic voters in Milwaukee in November. Other members of the bipartisan panel say they want Robert Spindell to resign, but Spindell says he's staying put. In sports, the Bucks fell to Miami last night, 108-102. You're listening to Devil Radio, 92.7 FM, WTTN, 1580 AM.
You wanted information as election results rolled in, and the Civic Media network of radio stations delivered it live.
I was so impressed with your coverage, and I listened to you guys, and I got all the coverage. It was amazing.
Civic Media, the only network with news reporters and show hosts stationed across Wisconsin, sharing political insight not found anywhere else. Elections or anytime, we are here for you. Your local Civic Media radio stations and streaming on the Civic Media app.
Hey, Darcy, I just saw the perfect house. Can you help me write an offer on it?
I'd be happy to, Brian. Did you see it at an open house?
No, I just called the sign and had the agent show it to me. I didn't want to bug you.
Brian, how many times have you heard me say don't call the sign?
All of them.
You called the agent working for the seller, and once you see the property with that agent, I'm no longer free to write an offer on it.
So...
You need to hire us from the beginning, help you find the right home, negotiate on your behalf, and protect your interests all the way through the process, and it shouldn't cost you a dime.
Solidarity Realty. They're real, they're solid, and they're honest. Find them at solidarityrealty.com.
This local musical interlude is brought to you by Max Inc. Radio. Dana Perry.
What am I fearing? Why do I worry at all? 'Cause I can feel that.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio every Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. Download the podcast at maxincradio.com. We are local music.
I asked what kind of family she wanted. She said, a family like yours.
Learn more about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org. You can't imagine the reward. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
See, I'm more important than you. I have got some big stuff going on. Big stuff.
The Devil's Advocates. Never personal, only politics.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show, the Friday edition. No Dom, but I've been joined by a fine, I guess we'll call him a co-devil for a bit. Hate to moniker you as such. He is the CEO of Civic Media. He is Sage Weil. Sage, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates.
Hey, Creedy. How's it going?
Good, man. Make sure you're talking loud and clear for the people at home. Sage, it is a new year, and Civic Media has rapidly grown over the course of 2022. Reminisce for me just a minute. Civic Media, first and foremost, is what? What's Civic Media if the people are just joining us?
Civic Media is a growing Wisconsin statewide network of radio stations. We are focused on hometown radio and investing in our communities here in Wisconsin. And 1 year ago, we were, just two stations? 1 year ago, we were just launching WAUK,
W-A-U-K, the Shaw.
In Waukesha. 7 months ago, we had our third station, WXCO in Wausau, and we are at, oh my God, I can't even keep track anymore. It's hard. We're about a dozen stations, I think, somewhere in there. Yeah.
A baker's dozen-ish. Sage, when you say stations, so you've created this network of news talk stations, and there are some other stations. One of our favorites, WRCO in Richland Center. They got the Packers. They got this great full-service country format. But the primary mission, just so the audience is clear, the primary mission of Civic Media is really the news talk format, is it not?
Yes. Well, I would say our primary mission is to inform and engage our listeners. And the most direct way to do that is with news talk programming, where we're speaking directly to the issues that we care about. But not everyone listens to news talk radio, so I think the music stations play an important role. We can give people, great music that they like, and then we can give them some quality news at the top of the hour. A few vegetables mixed in with their whatever.
Put a little cheese on that broccoli, fella.
Exactly.
Sage, the newest addition in the country music portfolio of Civic Media, St. Croix Country.
Yes. WSCM, broadcasting out of Baldwin, covering the entire St. Croix Valley. We're very excited to get that station launched. take a look at the website, stcroix.country. It's got beautiful logo. I think it's one of my favorites actually across our whole network.
It is a beautiful logo. It incorporates like a guitar and sort of a
tree line and a
neat
bird.
logo. We've had wonderful logos and branding from our pals over at Design Garden. It's playing what? Classic Legends country, something like
Country Legends 24/7. Yes. Yep. So this is I mean, I'm not a country music person, so I'm gonna butcher any attempt to like describe the genre, but I would call it classic country hits that not the Nashville stuff, but 70s, 80s, 90s, a few thousands, noughties, whatever you want to call it.
I find when I listen to this format, this Country Legends format, I know all the words, and I'm not a country guy either.
There you go.
But if you give us a chance, if you tune into the Civic Media app, and if you don't have one yet, go get one. It is what all the Patriots are doing, but it's on the St. Croix Country Music Station. Well, that's on the Civic Media app as well, right?
That's right. Yep. You can stream it on the app. You can get it through TuneIn. You can get it from the website. And if you're in St. Croix County, you can listen on the air at 95.7.
And we've actually got a very cute little facility there in Amory, Wisconsin. Amory is just north of Baldwin, Wisconsin. Baldwin is a cute little town, about 4,000, just off I-94, sort of Menominee area as you're going out market of Minneapolis. And if you go on Highway 63 North, and for all the people listening that aren't familiar with Highway 63, it is the vital road through the North Woods of Wisconsin, all the way up to Hayward and probably north of there. I've only gone as far as Hayward. But Amory is a little north of Baldwin, two towns. I think it's Deer Park, and then it's Amory. And we got this nice little shop, and we're running our little radio stations now out of Amory, Wisconsin. We've got our first hire joining us up there, and we've got some friends we've started making. But part of the goal, Sage, is what? Finding some locals, finding some local voices, and actually not just playing a radio station into the community, but becoming part of the community, right?
Exactly. Today, if you listen to the station, you're going to hear music like pretty much 24 hours, almost no commercials. So now's the time to tune in, certainly. But our goal for that station over time, with all our stations, is to make it a local hometown station that is connected with the community. So that means we're going to be adding local news, some local sports. Certainly in the fall, we'll be doing high school sports there, and eventually have a morning show or whatever else we can do to make that a way to find out, to connect with your community and find out what's going on and what you should be paying attention to.
Well, Sage, while I love the Minneapolis outmarket area, and I'm fortunate enough to play out in KTNF AM 950 country, and I would point out Amory is also our Badger outlet in that part of the world. Don't forget, Badgers tip off about noon tomorrow on WXEE 1260 AM. Tune in. But Sage, probably more exciting to me in this whole broader political mission of reaching all corners of the state of Wisconsin, the Fox Valley Green Bay man. So what's new? I've been teasing this for weeks, Sage. I mean, I said, wait, we're coming to Green Bay. We're coming to Green Bay. When are we coming to Green Bay, Sage Weil?
Today we are coming to Green Bay. Today we are.
Somebody tell Harvey K.
Yeah.
Say that again. We're on the air in Green Bay.
On the air in Green Bay, yes. WGBW. And I'm forgetting the frequency.
I can tell you the frequency. I will never forget our beloved new Green Bay frequency, 1590 AM. And you can hear that son of a gun all the way up to like Marinette, all the way up to Thumb of Door County. On the AM side, 1590 AM. And more importantly, 97.9 FM.
There we go. That's right.
And our, inferior whitey righty competitors are just on the dial second adjacent, like 97.5 somewhere. But we're the better positioned 97.9. And we're very proud of that signal. And we've got a wonderful facility on Washington Street. Can't wait to go do my first show from Green Bay. I think it's going to be next Friday, Sage. I think I'm going to sneak up to Washington Street. That's right on the Fox River.
Yep.
And the Fox River is sort of integral to a lot of our facilities in the Fox Valley.
That's right. Our Oshkosh studio is also right on the Fox River. But that Green Bay facility, I'm super excited. I'm a little jealous that you're going to be up there next week. I can't wait to get up there.
Join me, man.
Yeah,
just a 2.5 hour car ride.
I've just been looking through all the pictures. It looks great. I can't wait to get up there, get on the air. I think that location is particularly exciting. We're right on the river. What's it called?
The city deck.
The city deck. Yes, there's sort of that pedestrian walkway there, and we're just a block off right there on the corner of Washington. There's going to be, I think, live music during the summer. It's going to be sort of I don't know. I don't know all the full story here, but my understanding is that's been a nicely developed, redeveloped area of downtown, and the community's really invested in that space, and we're very excited to be a part of it.
Well, the city deck is on the Fox River, and we are effectively, our building is adjacent to the Ray Nitschke Bridge, which is one of the,
right.
Whenever you watch Monday Night Football and they're doing not the blimp anymore, the little drones, they use the drone video.
Mm-hmm.
But you will see the building that WGBW, our new business office, our radio location, soon to be our studio location in Green Bay, will soon be a prominent part of the Green Bay skyline, we hope.
That is part of the plan. Yes, we're very excited to be there.
Depends on how big Sage Weil wants to go on signage.
Yeah.
Folks, you are listening
how big will they let us go?
To the Devil's Advocates radio show. No Dom today. I got Sage Weil. He is the CEO of Civic Media. This is a rapidly growing media company. That's by other people's assessment, Sage. I never think it grows quite quickly enough, but you have done an incredible job this year of not just putting your financial resources behind the growth of, let's call it, truth talk radio. Some will label us liberal talk radio, but it's the truth. We are leading with the truth out here, or at least that's my endeavor each and every day. And Sage, it's really still growing, isn't it? I feel like it's growing, the Blob right now. Do you remember the Blob movies?
I
Blob
never actually watched them.
Grow larger.
But
that's like me after the holidays.
There you go. I think, yes, it has been a whirlwind 6 months for us, 7 months, whatever it's been. I think it was June. We were still just adding that third station, and here we are at 12 or 13 or wherever we are. It's funny. It turns out that, 6 months ago, the real challenge was figuring out what stations can we find? How do we go about buying them? Who's going to sell to us? All those were the questions at the top of the mind. And now the question is oh, great. Now we've got 12 stations. How do we actually run them? How do we staff them? How do we keep them on the air? So we certainly have our hands full over here. It's an exciting time for the company.
And you've certainly grown the amount of human capital in the Civic Media family. I think when we started 2022, we had approximately 5 full-time employees and numerous host and part-time employees, but about 5 full-time people to run the stations. And you're somewhere around 50 now, aren't you, Sage?
Between 40 and 50, somewhere in there. Depends on how you count the part-time folks. Yeah.
That's quite growth. That's a lot of growth.
It is an exciting time to be in radio in Wisconsin.
It is. And Sage, setting aside some of the commercial applications, maybe we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's talk about what comes next here politically in the state of Wisconsin. We lived through the midterms, and I feel like the state of Wisconsin potentially dodged a bullet. And when you look at the outcome, Tony Evers won by 89,000 votes. That's a landslide relative to recent Wisconsin margins.
For Wisconsin, yeah.
But of course, we look and say, but our pal Mandela Barnes was not as fortunate. He lost by just under 27,000 votes to incumbent Ron Johnson. So while the Death Star, this Civic Media network, is being built, it's not, you can't take out Alderaan quite yet. It's not fully operational in all ways, but it's been up on the air for 6 months or longer in a number of these markets. And I would say people are starting to find this talk format, the host of Civic Media's network, the team. Sage, do you think this station group, this network, this Civic Media, how impactful do you think it'll be here in the Supreme Court race?
I would like to think that we will be very impactful, but time will tell. I think we've had most of our stations have been on the air and broadcasting our new talk format for several months now, and so our listeners have had a chance to listen. They've had a chance to hear what we're talking about, and get a sense of how we approach issues. We're not telling you what to think. We're telling you, we're trying to describe all sides of the issue, and give you a bit of the nuance and understand hopefully where people are coming from, and then not be shy about offering our opinion, particularly in situations, as often seems to be the case here in Wisconsin, where one of those opinions feels very disingenuous, based on the values that we feel that we should be judging these things by, namely transparency and support for democracy, and a support for inclusiveness and understanding, and so on. So I'm very excited about these next couple of months and seeing how what kind of impact we can have.
It's really interesting. I'd like to think, the days of election denialism, we've overcome that. I'd like to think, the dominance of right-wing talk radio and the misinformation that they willingly spew. I'd like to think we've overcome all that. But I would point out an interesting point. There are 2 election deniers running in the 8th Senate District to replace Alberta Darling. If either of those candidates, Knodel or Janelle Branchen, were to win, I'd see that as a real failure, not of civic media, but of democracy. So we'll keep poking. We'll keep poking the bees, poking the bear. Come back. More of the Devil's Advocates. I've got the Civic Media CEO, my partner, Sage Weil, live in the Madison studios.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Don't act like you're not impressed.
My early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
But it gave my mom and me more time to plan together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates.
Bill Press, thanks for sticking around, man.
The idea that idiot, Ron Johnson, the guy who says can't call it an armed riot because they didn't have any arms. Read or listen to what Michael Fanone says about Ron Johnson and the fact that there were no arms. It was an armed riot. And Ron Johnson, he's a phony who doesn't deliver, who lies, who certainly does not represent Wisconsin. I hope that people realize there's no Senate seat more important in this country.
For podcasts of shows, special events, and more, visit civicmedia.us.
Hey everybody, it's time for today's STEM tip. Want to know how to make your selfies even better? Okay, let's use science. The best time for photos is golden hour. That's the moment right before the sun sets, when the atmosphere scatters blue and violet wavelengths, making perfect, soft, and golden selfie light to show off that beautiful face of yours. Click. Check out Chic and STEM for more inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
My early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
But it gave my mom and me more time to plan together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Here's your Devil Radio forecast. Lows level off around 21 tonight. Under cloudy skies, northwesterly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Daytime highs approaching 36. Tomorrow, partly cloudy. Lows around 28. Tomorrow night, overcast skies. Temps well above average. Sunday and Monday, with highs from the upper 30s to the mid 40s. Chance for scattered showers Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 26 degrees.
1, 2, make you wanna.
The Devil's Advocates. Making radio great again.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Friday edition. I got a fine guest here in the Solidarity Realty Studios right here in Madison, Wisconsin. He is Sage Weil, the CEO of Civic Media. We've had him on before. We brought him back because Civic Media is still in growth mode and there's lots of exciting news, and we wanted to share some with the audience. First and foremost, today, the first day that Civic Media plays on WGBW GB. That's for Green Bay. It's right in the name. 97.9 FM. Tell your friends. 1590 AM. We're also playing some country music up in the St. Croix Valley. St. Croix Country, 95.7 FM. And, you know, we got our friends up there in Amory, 1260 AM. Lake Air. So, Sage Weil, I understand there's $1 million advertising giveaway happening through Civic Media. I better start using my brain a little bit here. $1 million, man, that's a lot. That is a quite generous offer that you and the senior VP are making, Sage.
It is a lot. It's a big number. And when Roxanne first proposed it, I was like, what are you talking about here? But I have to say, when we were first putting the website together, I think it was Rebecca put an extra 3 zeros on there. Wasn't paying attention.
Like a $1 billion giveaway?
Some minor comedy ensued in the chat after that. But $1 million, that's right. $1 million in advertising on our radio network to be given away to Wisconsin businesses.
And really, this is not limited to small businesses, but I would say Civic Media have shown sort of a mission to support Main Street. Small business, I think, is probably more where this is geared. Do you think, Sage?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I would like to see most of the money go. But it really depends on who applies. Our requirements are simply that you be licensed to do business here in Wisconsin and have an actual physical location. The key for us is to be building relationships with businesses in the communities that we serve, and we want to support them and support Main Street businesses in general.
Now, Sage, a year ago, WAUK gave away $50,000 in advertising grants. I thought that was a hell of a lot of money. $1 million is 20 times that much money. If don't like to do much math on the radio, but if my math serves, that's 20 times as much. But you've got a lot more stations now. Civic Media is a much more substantial thing. But the least amount of any advertising grant, my understanding, is $5,000. That's right. A lot of radio advertising. You can do a lot of good for a small business with $5,000.
That's right. And I think that the key here to recognize is that, I mean, this is a grant. So if you're a small business, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to pay us anything. If you receive one of these grants, then we will work with you to produce a 30-second commercial spot, and we will figure out what stations it makes sense to play on and where and when and all of that, and walk you through this whole process. And our goal is that, first and foremost, we'll demonstrate to those businesses the value that they can derive from advertising on radio. And hopefully that'll be the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship. That's a win-win for everyone. But even if those advertisers don't come back, we feel that this is an important way to show the people in Wisconsin and the communities that we're serving that we're serious about investing in these stations and these communities.
Sage, I tease you occasionally. I say, you should brag more. You don't brag. Let me do a little bragging for this little network. WRCE, Richland Center, News from the Center. A couple of months ago, it was a differently formatted music station. And WRCO is this wonderful country music full service station. Mm-hmm. But we brought this brand new news talk format to Richland Center, Richland County, and it started out slow. People started streaming us, if you're at your desk or whatever, many people stream. And we saw like 1,500 streamers the first month. Not a bad start. But within a couple of months, we saw as Todd Alba's show rolled out on the mornings, and we saw news, what are we calling it? Sunrise from the Center. I mean, these guys are up at 5 o'clock doing live radio on the local channel. By 6 o'clock, they got Sunrise from the Center. At 8 o'clock, Todd Alba's on. And we have seen, 500-600% growth, 10,000 people a month in little old Richland Center, not just listening on the radio, but streaming, proving it. They're being patriots. They're using the Civic Media app. It is really rapid growth relative to radio audience. People were obviously clamoring. They wanted this sort of content. Someone just finally provided it.
Yes. Yep. And I think that is it's a pattern we expect and hope to see elsewhere in the state too, where we are buying stations that often have very little audience or sometimes no audience. And in fact, the station that we bought in Amory, WXCE 1260 AM, had been turned off for a year. And we're turning it back on. We're getting it back on the air, and we're bringing programming that we think is relative to the people there, not just by bringing them state issues, but local issues as well. And so we initially are primarily programming with content that that's airing across the state. But as we staff up, we will be bringing more local news and local morning hosts and so on. And we expect that when that happens, we'll see an uptick in engagement as well.
Well, in Amory, we're finally giving them Wisconsin news instead of Minneapolis news. Sage Weil, CEO of Civic Media, before we wrap up, Sage, we're in a political cycle, and we just went through the midterms, and we saw so many negative ads, so many third-party dark money ads come through, and it kind of caught us flat-footed. We weren't prepared for people wanting to buy Republican outfits, wanting to buy ads on our little liberal talk radio airwaves. So what is the plan as we go into the primary here? What is the plan for Civic Media in regards to political ads?
Right. So for the primary, we will be, throughout the full election, we will be accepting ads from the candidates themselves. So if you're running for an office and you want to advertise, then we will take those ads. And there are all sorts of rules around that. If you accept advertising from one candidate, you have to take ads from all of the candidates in that same race.
All qualifying candidates.
All qualified candidates.
What about third-party dark money groups?
Right. That's where it gets interesting. And there we're making a small distinction. In general, we will not be taking third-party dark money advertising. The exception is if it is an advertising that is not advocating for a particular candidate or doing electioneering, but it is instead a more general get out the vote type of message.
So those go vote is okay, but go vote for X is not going to be okay.
Yes. And because in reality, most of those ads aren't go vote for X. They're Y is a lying, cheating, terrible person or whatever it is. Right. And nobody wants to hear any more of that. We've had enough of it. And it's rarely, presented in good faith. So, yeah, I don't think anyone will mind.
Sage Weil, CEO of Civic Media, thanks for coming on the Devil's Advocates, updating the audience. Sage, we look forward to more rapid growth in 2023 and turning on this Death Star and seeing if we can have some impact, especially in the spring election. Sage, thank you so much for your investment, commitment to what we do around here.
Well, thank you so much for laying the groundwork and showing me which way is up in this radio world.
Well, I can't tell you which way is up, but I can tell you which way is next. James Santelle joining me, the Happier Happy Hour. That's what's next. Thank you, Sage Weil.
Good luck. We're all counting on you.
When you're having computer problems, you need a company you trust to get things working again, quickly and affordably. Madison Computer Works has been doing that for business and residential customers for decades. Our computer care plans take away the hassle of being without your computer or needing to bring it in for repair. Starting at only $10 a month, our local and friendly techs provide remote help and can fix most problems in just minutes. Our computer care plans are the perfect holiday gift. Call 608-231-8000 and sign up today. Madison Computer Works, computers that work for you.
You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app too? And if you miss a show or game, find it wherever you get your podcasts or on our website, civicmedia.us.
Madison, tune in every weekday from 11 to 2 on Devil Radio, 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM for the Tom Hartman program. Join the show's conversation because our democracy is not a spectator sport. Listen live.
You are listening to WTTN 1580 AM Columbus, W224 EG Madison, always streaming on the Civic Media app.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. Alabama and Georgia still under states of emergency after violent storms and tornadoes. In Autauga County, Alabama, Ernie Blaggett with the Emergency Management Agency.
Well, I would imagine this is probably going to be in the years before this is all back to where it needs to be. It's going to be a long recovery.
Total deaths from the storms across Alabama and Georgia are at least 9. The Republican-led House Judiciary Committee announcing it is launching its own investigation after the appointment of a special counsel to investigate classified documents found at President Biden's Delaware home and a Washington office. After fierce fighting, Russia claiming its forces captured the contested salt mining town of Soledar in what would mark a rare victory for the Kremlin after a series of setbacks in its war in Ukraine. 35-year-old Navy veteran Taylor Dudley back in the U.S. after being released from Russian custody after 9 months. He was detained after he crossed the border from Poland while backpacking. This is ABC News. Another big company says it will demand its workers be back in the office more days every week.
Starbucks employees who work at the Seattle headquarters and are within commuting distance are being told at the end of this month they must start going into the office at least 3 days a week. In an email, CEO Howard Schultz said corporate employees were asked to go in 1 to 2 days a week, but that it's clear many employees have not been doing that. The new rule will be to go in at least on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and the third day will be flexible. Alex Stone, ABC News.
The IRS announces the date that tax season will officially begin. ABC's Brian Clark.
The IRS will begin accepting 2022 federal income tax returns on January 23rd. Leaders say this tax season should go more smoothly than the last few. Acting IRS Commissioner Doug O'Donnell said the agency's trained thousands of new employees to help customers, and it's making progress on the hundreds of thousands of unprocessed returns from last tax season.
Chuck Severson, ABC News.
You know what? I'll tell you something. There's nothing better than a hot sausage, couple 2-3 cold beers, and Devil Radio on a box. When you're gonna turn on the radio, you gotta listen to Devil Radio 92.7.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Natner with your headlines. Wisconsin state senators are working on a bill to protect victims of child sex trafficking from being prosecuted for prostitution. The Safe Harbor bill, still in its early stages, State Senator Jesse James of Altoona is the lead author and seeking co-sponsors until later this month. The bill will protect children from prostitution charges as victims of sex trafficking because they can't legally consent to the acts involved. The measure needs to pass both the Senate and the Assembly before being signed into law by the governor. A Milwaukee hospital postponing all elective non-urgent surgeries until mid-February or later. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reporting a memo to staff at Ascension Columbia St. Mary's.
Greetings, kind sir.
Evan, how are you today?
Doing well. Having a good day on the radio.
Wonderful. As every day is a good day when you're on the radio, right?
Yep. If the show goes, it's good. That's our standard.
And
good deal. I hear you. I see you.
And engaged and
and Stacey just had a couple awesome segments with Crudy. That was great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good to be with you.
Always, as always. All right, we got about 2.5 minutes.
Terrific. Thanks, Evan.
Sound to you. Our celebration is your chance to work with Civic Media's amazing sales team, creating a radio advertising campaign promoting your business for free. Save the date. The $1 million advertising giveaway is only happening on Thursday, January 26th. Full details on our website, civicmedia.us/million.
This is Pat Greitlow from Up North News Radio. On the air, online, or on demand, make it a point to catch the first word on Wisconsin news, sports, and more weekday mornings from 6 to 8 all across the stations of the Civic Media Radio Network.
Join me, Stephanie Miller, and the entire Sexy Liberal Resistance every morning from 8 to 11 for the Stephanie Miller Show right here on 92.7 FM and WTTN 1580 AM. Listen live Monday through Friday on Devil Radio, Wisconsin's home for progressive news talk radio.
I was just curious as to why you called it the Paul Revere Show.
The Paul Revere Show is named this way because the poem that we all know, the famous ride, the poem was written to rally the troops to fight slavery and fight for democracy. And so I named the show the Paul Revere Show because I thought it was the time to get on the air and talk about democracy.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. always on the Civic Media app.
This local musical interlude is brought to you by Max Inc. Radio. Kelsey Miles.
Let the music roll. Hit it.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio every Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. Download the podcast at maxincradio.com. We are local music.
I'm looking at the phone lines. I'm seeing some familiar faces. What's reminded Gene of Eau Claire?
Well, welcome back,
Matt. I really missed him. We've been missing getting woke every morning, but now we'll get woke in the afternoon.
What's my name? Andrew of Detroit.
Professor, it's so nice you're back. We missed you during your vacation, and I'm very happy to be in your class for this semester.
Thanks a lot for calling in. I appreciate all my callers.
Tune in to Matt Flynn Direct, Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 p.m.
Devil Radio programming is produced live in the Solidarity Realty Studios. Find them at solidarityrealty.com. Solidarity.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves and corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening. 3, 2, 1. Now live from the Devil Radio Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning. Welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Here is your host, Mike Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Friday happy hour. You know, my little buddy Dom lives for the weekend, but he's already on it. He's, I guess he's an excused absence back on Tuesday, but, you know, he's never quite excused. So instead, I got to find Code Devil, who's joining me right now. I want to thank my most recent guest, first and foremost, CEO of Civic Media, my partner, Sage Weil. Thank you, Sage, for laying out your vision for 2023. And welcome back to the returning champ, former U.S. Attorney, host of Morning Cannoli Saturday mornings right here on the Civic Media Network, 9 to 11 a.m. James Santelle, the incomparable. How you doing, Counselor?
Neither a champ nor incomparable, but delighted to be with you again this afternoon, Mike.
Man, you got a new haircut. You're looking quite...
I do have it got a little short this time, but, you know, it's the kind of the lawyer look, right, for January of 2023.
You're looking quite handsome, Counselor. Breaking news. Recently breaking, new to me at least, and you probably researched this, Counselor, but I'm going to throw it out there. The E. Jean Carroll defamation lawsuit against the former president, Donald Trump, and she accused him of raping her in a Bergstrom's department store many years ago. And during the political campaign, Trump said effectively, never happened, she's lying, and she filed a defamation lawsuit. Now, my understanding, the original lawsuit was dismissed. Is that the correct sequence of events?
It was through some machinations of the prior administration having to do with the Federal Tort Claims Act and whether it comes into federal court. And so if, in fact, the original lawsuit was subject to a ruling on whether or not the United States of America is substituted for Donald Trump, then it would be dismissed. So it's a little bit complicated under the jurisdiction, but you're right. We've got even more action even since that.
Well, and the depositions taken of the former president, they've been released. Yes. They've been unsealed. The Trump team was supposed to be responsive to the court in like 3 days. There is a new legal challenge under New York's sexual assault law that effectively there's no statute of limitation. So while this was originally a civil defamation suit under this newer New York law, it's really a rape case, is it not, Jim?
Yes, and so we've got a separate, again, the other one, arguably state case, arguably federal. This, again, under this new law that basically captures for a period of 1 year those people whose statute of limitations would otherwise expire. It permits claims to be filed. And that's what E. Jean Carroll did fairly recently, just the fall of last year, under this new theory, under this new New York law that really does permit her to resurrect an assault claim, which is different from the civil defamation claim. Again, also prompted, however, by the former president's repeated statements in the public domain that this never happened, which again doesn't help if you're looking to avoid lawsuits. So we do have both of those still pending. And then it's inside all of this that his recent deposition transcript ordered by the district court judge in the other case that is a deposition transcript now released about what he says and does not say about what happened at in the 90s at that Bergdorf Goodman store.
Well, I don't know about the complete transcripts, but the very first question asked of the former president, according to reporting at Politico at this hour, effectively got tripped up. They asked him about the E. Jean Carroll book. She was a writer. She published a book, and they asked him about the publisher, and he's like, bad publisher. Well, who is the publisher? I don't know. Well, the publisher was HarperCollins. Still a bad publisher. Well, the publisher, HarperCollins, published your son-in-law, Jared Kushner's book. Well, they still publish a lot of bad books as well. I mean, this is how it began, Jim. Right. I have not had any opportunity to jump in and read any of the transcripts. Have you seen any further reporting, any additional points where the former president got tripped up, let's say?
Right. I have not. Also, just breaking, as you say, that the transcript released by virtue of this judicial order here. The difficulty, of course, is that the former president now under oath and obliged to answer questions in this civil setting. And the complication here, and again, I haven't seen all of this transcript yet, is that because he is now facing some criminal exposure in the other lawsuit, the question is, did he raise the Fifth Amendment? What kinds of things did he say? And plainly confronting the questions of E. Jean Carroll's attorneys about what happened. And my general sense from seeing some of the reporting here is quite pointed and quite specific. We'll have to kind of revisit the exact statements that he made after there's further digesting of all this. But it certainly complicates his criminal exposure, his civil exposure, a lot of things going on here. All of it because when he was in the White House, he decided to take her on and say, you know what, as you said, she's a liar. This never happened. Again, as we've talked so many times before, if he had simply said nothing at all, probably all this would have gone away. We'd have some articles out there and that would be it. He is in many ways his own worst enemies when it comes to these things that he says in public. Now he's in double trouble, and we'll take another look at the transcript as we get more into that document.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Finest of guests, James Santelle, former U.S. attorney. More importantly, he is the host of Morning Cannolis. Give him a taste every Saturday morning, 9 to 11 a.m., all across the Civic Media Network. Replayed Sunday mornings at the same time. Well, Jim, there is some other big news on the legal front. A special counselor appointed by Merrick Garland to investigate not Donald Trump, but the current president for his own, as I would probably term them, paperwork crimes. First and foremost, what do you know about the special counselor, Robert Hur, other than the fact that he's a Trump holdover?
Right, absolutely. So former U.S. attorney in Maryland, and again, a Trump nominee, a Trump appointee, served a little while, most recently at the law firm of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, which is a very reputable law firm there in Washington, D.C., other places, and was previously, of course, inside the Department of Justice, inside the operation, the leadership of the department, a graduate of Stanford Law School, Harvard College. We recall well that Rod Rosenstein was our former Deputy Attorney General. This fellow, Mr. Hur, former U.S. Attorney Hur, served as one of his principal deputies during that period of time. So he plainly has credentials. He has been a prosecutor for a while. He's got some civil experience. And again, the Attorney General has plucked him up, again, to follow up on his decision to appoint a special prosecutor, undeniably, as he's been doing recently, reaching across the aisle to find a Republican so that he is avoiding the claim, the allegation, the charge that this is, whatever the decision is made, it's a product of partisan views and partisan viewpoints here. So that's who Hur is. Again, beyond that, I'm sure we'll chat about this more. Significant differences, as the media and others are saying, between what we know about the Biden case and what we know about the Mar-a-Lago Trump case. But nonetheless, the kind of thing that Merrick Garland has got to be saying, gosh, I don't need this kind of additional investigative work to do. I've just got to be focused on what I've got on my docket already.
Jim Santelle, my fun guest. Jim, let's talk about the differences. I was going there next. You led me. I have been quick to dismiss the paperwork crimes, as you've heard me describe them, against the former President Donald Trump, despite the classified nature, despite the voluminous nature, because I have thought there are probably more specific and more significant criminality that the former president was guilty of. It's not that I think he should get away with it. It's that if he is charged, indicted with some crime on the federal level, I think Jack Smith, the special counselor, should really be looking at the January 6th activities.
Yes.
But here we find our guy, my guy, Joe Biden, the guy I voted for, the guy I've been rooting for, at minimum being very sloppy, setting a very bad optic. And then when it's two sets of documents, you got them in the garage out by the Corvette. I mean, you got to take flack from guys like Peter Doocy from Fox News. So, Jim, obviously the optics for the current president, they're awful. But there are quite a bit and significant differences between the two men and how they responded and their conduct. So please help differentiate between the paperwork crimes of the former and the paperwork crimes of the current.
Right. Concurrence right off the top with you and your perspective that Jack Smith should be focusing on January 6th. And hopefully sometime soon we'll be on this radio broadcast to talk about the return of a grand jury indictment as to those kinds of offenses. As to this one, you're absolutely right. Remember that the matter involving Mar-a-Lago was going on for months, well over a year. Repeated requests from NARA, the National Archives folks, to return these documents, a grand jury subpoena that was not fully complied with, ultimately a search warrant when it became clear that the documents weren't there. What does that all show? That all shows notice on the part of the former president and intent to keep the documents, right? That's one of the big differences here. Here,
give them back, they're mine, Jim, give them back.
There you go, right? Here, what you have, of course, is, again, taking the media's reports at their word. You've got the discovery of these documents, both in the office here in Washington, D.C., and then also in Delaware. The disclosure of them right away, even before there's any reasonable, probable cause to believe, if you will, that they're sitting there. And again, that reflects what? That reflects a lack of intent to do something illegal. And that's the reason why the broad takeaway here is highly unlikely this is going to lead to a criminal prosecution, as opposed to what's going on with Donald Trump's side of things.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. A very talented lawyer, my friend James Santelle. He does his own show. You better not be holding back the good stuff, Jim. Morning cannolis each Saturday morning right here on the Civic Media Network, 9 to 11. But we ain't done with you yet. Please stick around. James Santelle. Everyone, stick around. More Devil's Advocates.
No, honest. I ran out of gas. I had a flat tire. I didn't have enough money for cab fare. My tux didn't come back from the cleaner.
Here's a fun fact for you. The average chameleon can point their eyes in 2 different directions. On the other hand, the average human can't. So unless you're a chameleon, there's absolutely no way you can focus on texting and driving at the same time. So don't do it, unless you're a chameleon.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates.
I got a little email missive just a little bit ago. Can I share just a little?
Please.
Friend, Trump is one day away from taking the stage in Wisconsin, and we need you to help stop big tech from censoring his American First message. By taking our Trump rally poll, can we count on your prompt response? Here are your options. Yes, I stand with Trump, or no, I support censorship. Let's just say you feel a little pushed in the corner.
Check out the entire podcast library at DARNWI.com.
Phones, social media, you've kept up with the times. If you can do that, you can definitely save for retirement. Go to aceyourretirement.org, and in just 3 minutes, you'll get free tips to help boost your retirement savings. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Weather brought to you by the Joint Chiropractic. Take advantage of their New Year's promotion now. Buy a 10-month wellness plan and get 2 months free and use your HSA or FSA dollars to do it. Visit them at any of their 4 Madison locations.
Here's your Devil Radio forecast. Lows level off around 21 tonight. Under cloudy skies, northwesterly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Daytime highs approaching 36. Tomorrow, partly cloudy. Lows around 28. Tomorrow night, overcast skies. Temps well above average. Sunday and Monday with highs from the upper 30s to the mid 40s. Chance for scattered showers Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 24 degrees.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
The Devil's Advocates, radio for the 99%.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. We got the finest of guests. He is Jim Santelle, host of Morning Cannolis, every Saturday morning right here on Civic Media. You should be setting your alarm clock, getting up and listening. Listen to him, and then I think the Badgers tip off at noon tomorrow. Jim, appreciate you making some time for the big show this afternoon. And Jim, there's so much legal news, but nothing, has really been brought to closure. We don't have any closure on any of these issues. So I continue to watch, especially Fulton County, Georgia, Fannie Willis, and we understand the grand jury, the state level grand jury has come to closure. And we understand something about like 25, 26 grand jury members by a preponderance, by more than half, wanted their information, their report released to the public. And there's going to be a public hearing on January 24th. And hopefully, Jim, at that time, we'll know more. But between now and then, could we see criminal indictments? Could that grand jury have recommended criminal indictments against the former president? And when would we know? When would they drop?
Right. All great procedures.
Can't hear you, Jim. Did you mute yourself, fella? There you are. You're back.
Okay, very good. All right.
When will we know about the indictments in Georgia, Jim?
There you go. Very good. So this was a special grand jury. And again, I don't purport to be an expert in the legal criminal procedure in the state of Georgia, but special grand jury plainly taking evidence presented by the district attorney there, Fannie Willis, for a number of months here. We've seen a lot of reporting about who is testifying there, all being compelled to testify. Those people have been contesting those subpoenas, and they've come to the end of their work. And under the procedures there in Georgia, this special grand jury does not, as I understand it, have the capacity to return an indictment. Nonetheless, they do have findings, and they presumably have delivered those now to the district attorney, who, again, as I understand the procedure there, can now present these to an indicting grand jury and present all this information. Doesn't have to go back to square one. That's the procedure there. And so, depending upon Fannie Willis's burning the midnight oil, getting these other things in place, it is entirely possible that we are coming to the end of that pre-trial, pre-charging procedure, and a new grand jury there in Fulton County, taking on the work of this special grand jury, could now return an indictment, again, focused upon what happened in Georgia, but especially focused upon the attempts by the president and his cohorts to try to affect the election there, the results of the 2020 election. 11,780 votes, that request of the Secretary of State, all of that focused on this, but also more broadly. She plainly was focusing on many things related to the election there, and all of that could come out, I believe, virtually any time now. It'd be interesting to see. She may, in fact, be somewhat opposed to having the release of all this before that decision is made for a variety of different reasons. But there is a time yet between now and the hearing. That could happen at any time, as I understand procedure there. And we could see some very significant news coming out of Georgia. And more beyond that narrow point, important point, but a narrow point nonetheless, it may well be that this could be among the most important criminal prosecutions of the former president and other people surrounding him. Why? Because this one could survive beyond a Biden administration. This one's not subject to pardon authority by a future president. And if Fannie Willis and the grand jury there indict, this one could in fact go to trial and go to conviction and presumably an appellate ruling supporting that conviction. We have talked before about the timing concerns right now with Merrick Garland indicting, Jack Smith indicting, and the problems with basically 22 months or so getting all of that done during this first term of the Biden administration. So again, the focus that you have, Mike, upon Georgia and about what Fannie Willis is doing cannot be overstated. And this may be the one that we're all looking at, not only very soon, but also historically.
Jim, you pointed out your expertise are in the federal courts, but why the redundancy of grand juries? Why must you bring one to closure and then what? Turn around and present the findings of this grand jury to the next? How does that part work? And does the second grand jury bring the indictments, or are they already recommended? And why can't Fannie Willis act upon the findings of the first grand jury?
Sure. As I understand it, once again, it is a vagary. It is an aspect of Georgia criminal procedural law. Every state has some differences. Not all states have grand juries, those kinds of things. And that's the way they do it there. Plainly, we've got a different federal system where we've got one grand jury that takes information, takes testimony, and then can also return a grand jury indictment. That same group. It certainly seems to make a whole lot more coherent, if you will, certainly efficient use of time to do it that way. This is the reality in Georgia. Not to say, however, that it further slows down the process. My sense is that by doing it this way, you've got a grand jury that truly is fact-finding, and their mission, if you will, to the extent that it might suggest that they've got an indicting mission as opposed to a charging mission. The notion here is find out what happened here, give us the facts, and let somebody else, a different grand jury, a different prosecution unit, determine whether or not what you have found in your exploration of the facts supports a grand jury indictment. I suspect it's simply affording defendants and the system generally a greater amount of due process and procedure that, again, strikes those in the federal system, including me, as being a little bit cumbersome, but nonetheless the way that it can, in fact, result in a charge there out of Georgia.
My fine guest, Jim Santelle. Jim, I'm going to ask you to stick around for one more segment. Then we'll keep some time at the end of the show for the airing of the grievances. But I'll at least express the question I have. We talk about the paperwork crimes of Mar-a-Lago. They seem so very obvious. The former president, well, he had the documents. But unfortunately, we also know the current president's got his own paperwork crimes, his own classified documents issue. Jim, I have looked at the case in Georgia predicated on the evidence that is in the public record. And specifically, I mean the phone call. Mm-hmm. I need 11,780 votes, one more than I have, he said. One more than he needs one more. He needs one more than that to win in the state of Georgia. Well, it was on tape. Come back, Lordy, there was tapes. Our fine guest, James Santelle, more of the Happier Happy Hour. You're listening to the Devil's Advocates.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. It's not personal. It's strictly...
That could be. It might be. It is Devil Radio 92.7.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Severson. Alabama and Georgia still under states of emergency after violent storms and tornadoes. In Autauga County, Alabama, Ernie Blaggett with the Emergency Management Agency.
Well, I would imagine this is...
You can stick around, Jim?
Absolutely. And tell Mike, too, if he'd like to have me stick around for the entire hour, including questions at the end, if they're right that period, happy to do that, whatever you choose to do. I am here until 6 o'clock.
I'll let him know. Thanks, man.
Right.
After fierce fighting, Russia claiming its forces captured the contested salt mining town of Solidar in what would mark a rare victory for the Kremlin after a series of setbacks in its war in Ukraine. 35-year-old Navy veteran Taylor Dudley back in the U.S. after being released from Russian custody after 9 months. He was detained after he crossed the border from Poland while backpacking. This is ABC News.
In time, you will know the true power of Devil Radio 92.7. It is your destiny.
This is Pat Kreitlow from Up North News and our new early morning program heard right here on weekday mornings, Up North News Radio. We're a small but scrappy state-based newsroom that covers politics and policy, but also other stories that show off our state, its people, places, food, and much more. You can find all of that on our website, upnorthnewswi.com, or on your favorite social media site. Just search for Up North News WI. Don't forget the WI and give us a follow. Then, from 6 to 8 a.m., we talk about those stories and much more right here on the statewide radio stations of Civic Media. We have guests, analysis, commentary, we talk music, sports, weather, and probably a few too many anecdotes about my time as a TV anchor, a state legislator, an island dweller, and now a grandpa. It's real information and good conversation that's unabashedly Wisconsin. That's Up North News Radio, weekday mornings from 6 to 8, on the radio, online, and on demand.
You wanted information as election results rolled in, and the Civic Media network of radio stations delivered it live.
I was so impressed with your coverage, and I listened to you guys, and I got all the coverage. It was amazing.
Civic Media, the only network with news reporters and show hosts stationed across Wisconsin, sharing political insight not found anywhere else. Elections or anytime, we are here for you, your local Civic Media radio stations, and streaming on the Civic Media app.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
At Chad's Design Build, we care deeply about the quality of the services that we provide to our clients. An excellent remodeling experience requires communication, honesty, accuracy, and a detailed plan, all of which helps to create a satisfied client. And these commitments spell our name. To learn more about the Chad's remodeling experience, go to chadsdesignbuild.com. Building a better world, one remodeled home at a time, and celebrating 30 years of excellence.
You've got questions about navigating the healthcare system? Kristen Lyerly helps us find answers and discusses other issues at the intersection of healthcare and politics. Hometown Health, Thursday mornings at 7:30 on Up North News Radio.
The big and tall of political talk, the Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Friday happy hour. It's almost the weekend. We'll get you home safe and informed by our fine guest, James Santelle, former U.S. attorney, host of Morning Cannolis each Saturday morning right here, 9 to 11, Civic Media Network. Jim, I got to tell you, though, as I was sort of spinning the yarn as we were wrapping up the segment, I talked about the public record in Georgia is so very clear.
Yes.
You know, we joke about the lack of a smoking gun in most cases, and you as a lawyer know far clearer than most in the audience, there ain't no smoking gun in most cases. But in this case, it's on the tape. Lordy, there's a smoking gun, Jim, relative to paperwork crimes, as I often describe them, I'm like Ron Johnson, minimizing the crimes of the former president in regards to the classified docs at Mar-a-Lago. Jim, this is so clearly a provable crime. Why has the man not been indicted, convicted, and on third appeal by now?
Right. Isn't that the frustration? And I am increasingly of the same mind, which is this now needs to move. This needs to move, whether it's in Georgia or out of the Department of Justice and the seventh floor of Main Justice in Washington, D.C. You do have something that you very seldom have in what I'm going to call a white collar, call it paper crimes kind of a case, which you've got the defendant, the putative defendant, the potential defendant here on tape, basically attempting to skew the election. And you can describe that in a number of different ways, federally, statewide. That's what Fani Willis has. So I have to believe that she is looking at the special grand jury, making a finding, yet there was the intent to do this. purposeful, obviously, to get that additional vote. Why? So that Georgia's electoral votes could swing in his way as opposed to Joe Biden and return him to power, as he said. So you've got a very clear statement there. And not to excuse at all the length of time that this has taken, my sense is that rather than simply charging that very discrete unit and saying, Mr. Trump, you're charged with having attempted to undermine the election here in Georgia by that statement, she expanded this and went beyond that, talked about the visits by Trump allies to Georgia, talked about other things involving the attempts to intimidate election workers there. So my guess is that what the special grand jury has found is not only a violation of the law, even if they don't come right out and indict on that, but also many other activities that were a part of what I'm going to call the Eastman approach on this Eastman memorandum, that were an attempt not only in Georgia, but around the country, including right here in Wisconsin, to undermine the 2020 election. So my prediction, we'll see if it's true or not, is that at some point when we're together, Mike, we're going to be talking about an indictment coming out of Fulton County that, yes, identifies that key element, that 11,780 vote plus one request that is at the core of this. But then beyond that, all sorts of other things, multiple defendants, multiple events, multiple transactions described in an indictment that is fairly sweeping. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is taking so long, is she expanded this, perhaps appropriately, beyond just that narrow smoking gun as you've described it. At the same time, get back to the fundamental point that you made and that I made as well, which is TikTok. It is now time to do something. And again, as I've expressed before on this fine broadcast, very concerned about the extent to which a federal criminal prosecution right now will be finished in time for the conclusion of a first Biden administration. Elected a second time, then you've got a new lease on life. But the notion that there could be federal pardons by an incoming president, perhaps of a Republican persuasion, could bring all that to an end. Not true. Not true of what's happening in Georgia. Not true what's happening also in New York. And not the civil matter, but the criminal matter. If, in fact, the district attorney there in Manhattan pursues some of those things that were the subject of sentencing just this past week, that too could also be the subject of some future prosecution here. So we need to look not just at Merrick Garland and Jack Smith and others, but to these state officials, and they may be the answer here longer term.
Jim Santelle, my fun guest, you referenced New York State. My understanding, the Trump org was sentenced, and I realize I've been kind of wrong on this topic before. I thought this was a civil trial, a criminal trial of the Trump org, and a $1.6 million fine, which seems like a lot to a working stiff, but relative to this supposed billionaire's fortune seems quite insignificant. But it's the max the law allowed in this circumstance, was it not, Jim?
That's exactly right. So that happens today. The state court judge there imposes the maximum. The attorneys for the Trump Corporation were asking for less than that. As many people have observed, $1.6 million. It may not be a drop in the bucket, but it's not that significant. It is the statutory maximum. And so the judge did not have discretion to go beyond that. We know that you can't throw a corporation in jail, but earlier this week, the same judge did send Alan Weisselberg to Rikers Island for a number of months, and he will begin that service by virtue not only of his plea agreement, but his testimony as well. So we've got two criminal convictions coming out of, once again, that state criminal prosecution. An awful lot of reason to believe, following up on my comment before, that Alvin Bragg in this file may not be done. We know he may still be looking at this matter involving trying to pay off people for not testifying about an affair that the president had. That would again have to be in time and also have to be related to a state offense there. And again, if that file is still open, we've always speculated that the reason why Alan Weisselberg was indicted first was a hope that he would come forth and testify against his continuing boss in that institution. He plainly hasn't done that. He didn't do it on the stand. He came close, but he did not do that. And so one would like to think at least that Alvin Bragg and the assistant DAs there are still looking at other avenues to pursue an indictment against the former president and perhaps others there. this may or may not be the end of that criminal prosecution in the state of New York coming out of Manhattan.
Jim, I saw a couple of snarky responses on the interwebs. Here's one. Finding the Trump org probably less than they paid their attorneys. I suspect there's probably an outstanding invoice larger to the Trump attorneys, probably got stiffed on the lawyers' bills, at least to date. Here's another one. Tell me what you think about this little sequence. Trump org, tax evasion, Trump University, fraud, Trump Foundation, stealing charity money, Trump hotels, financial crimes, Trump Saves America, wire fraud, Trump campaign finance crimes. Gosh, I wonder if there's a common criminal behind all of these criminal entities. How can all of these Trump-associated entities be guilty, but the guy in charge is somehow the Teflon Don?
It is stunning. And again, I join those who are shaking their heads in abject disbelief that this continues to be out there. Many of those are criminal prosecutions, again, of entities. Many of them are civil prosecutions, bringing to an end, for example, the university. We know as well, if you go across Foley Square and talk with the Attorney General of the state of New York, she's got this $250 million lawsuit against the Trump organizations, Trump companies, and Donald Trump and his children, also for this valuations issue having to do with real estate in Manhattan. And that is going forward as well. That's, again, a civil case, but very likely that at some point, maybe not soon, but some point down the road, that will be added to the list that you just read, Mike, of another situation where she's basically gone after them, stopping them from ever again holding positions in a corporation, a board of directors, that sort of thing. And yet, there needs to be at some point a criminal indictment, a criminal charge somewhere that says Donald John Trump, defendant, right? And that's whether it's a state prosecution, a federal prosecution. And as I think you're appropriately indicating, there is frustration that this much fraud, civil fraud, criminal fraud, describe it as you will, does not get to the core person who's at the core of all of this, the head of all of this, and that's Donald Trump. And that's why in the interest of rule of law, in the interest of justice, in the interest of history, our generation this time has got to return criminal charges. They can be discreet. They don't have to be everything coming out of January 6th. I've got here the report. I'm sure you read it top to bottom. It is compelling stuff. You don't have to charge everything out of here, but it has to happen. And it has to happen soon, not only because of the statute of limitations, but because people like you, good people like you and others, deserve to know that the rule of law applies to everybody, and that this is not a situation where you can simply continue to do these kinds of things and get away with it, as he has done throughout his career.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Friday edition, the Happier Happy Hour. I'll make a confession. I've never been to law school. I never took the LSATs. But my fine guest, Jim Santelle, he has, and he's a lot smarter than me, and he damn near always gets it right as far as I can tell. So, Jim, got to pull you back to the January 6th report. They did make criminal referrals. Of course, their criminal referrals don't matter. They're irrelevant except perhaps in history, judging this bipartisan panel, this sub-select committee, choosing to criminally refer the former president of the United States. Well, I have not done the heavy lifting of reading that big book, Jim. I'll let you do the homework and you just tell me. But Rolling Stone has done a deep dive, and they found an interesting text I want to ask you. I look at Georgia, and that was effectively Trump and perhaps a few co-conspirators, Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, Lindsey Graham, looking for, give me 5 dead people, just anything to call fraud and declare a false election. I'm not as clear on their criminality. I'm very clear, because I've heard it on tape, of Donald Trump's criminality. But the January 6th, this seems like a much broader plot with lots of co-conspirators. And the January 6th committee and the reporting of Rolling Stone pointed out that the Stop the Steal guy, Ellie Alexander, had sent a text message the morning of January 6th as the crowd was on the march towards the Capitol to Paul Gosar, Republican rep from Arizona, who's been prominent in many of these January 6th activities on behalf of MAGA Nation, and said effectively, get out of the building. It's hell out here, and they're coming your way. You know, we're bringing hell with us. Specifically, he told his chief of staff, I think you and your staff should maybe leave. This is hell out here. Jim, does that imply, what does that imply? I don't want to put words in your evil mouth.
Right. I mean, superficially, it implies that there's danger, right? This is serious. This is not visitors, tourists at the Capitol, and that's not an unimportant point. Beyond that, the question is, what does it convey about intent? What did you know in advance and as that was happening? Now, the mere identification of a group heading toward the Capitol, some of whom seem to be armed, maybe not with firearms, but with other things, that in and of itself does not convey, does not incorporate criminal intent. On the other hand, the things that that again are in this report that talk about the amount of, as Liz Cheney would say, the summoning to Washington, D.C., the lighting of the match, those kinds of things. What is your purpose in doing that? And if indeed it is in fact to obstruct an official proceeding, false statements, which is the false electors charge, these 4 things that the committee has sent to Main Justice identified as crimes, as I look through, and I haven't read every last word, as I look through this report, I see an awful lot of intent, an awful lot of purposeful activity designed, again, to obstruct proceedings, to make these false statements. The false electors portion is very compelling. And all of this, again, presumably before Jack Smith as well, could inform the basis for grand jury indictments against more than just the former president, but many people identified here and presumably also before the federal grand jury investigating this matter now.
He is the host of Morning Cannolis. Leave some cream in the cannoli for tomorrow morning, Jim. Tune in tomorrow morning, 9 to 11, right here on the Civic Media Network, originating from WAUK in the Shaw. Jim, Santelle, have a wonderful weekend. I'll look forward to listening to your fine show. Thank you for joining us here this Friday afternoon on the Devil's Advocates.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Honored to be with you once again. Have a good weekend. Take care.
Thank you, Jim. Come back with us. One last segment for your grievance this Friday afternoon, 844-96-PARTY.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates.
The plaintiff, Donald J. Trump, hereby serves his suit against the defendants, Hillary Clinton and her cohorts, orchestrated an unthinkable plot, one that shocks the conscience and is an affront to the nation's democracy.
This week on Fox.
You know what I mean? Like you're throwing a few too many adverbs and adjectives in this sentence.
One man, one mission, Donald Trump gets made fun of. This is Watergate 2.
Making radio great again.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's your Devil Radio forecast. Overcast tonight with lows around 21. Northwest winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Highs around 36. Tomorrow, mainly clear skies. Lows dip down to about 28. Tomorrow night, overcast skies. Overcast skies Sunday with highs around 40. 44, chance for scattered showers Monday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 24 degrees.
kicking ass and taking names since the Wisconsin Uprising. The Devil's Advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, the Happy Hour. Rolling on. What a fine guest James Santelle always is. Appreciate it, Jim. Don't forget, try his fine program. 2 hours of Jim Santelle. That's a lot of cannolis. Morning cannolis right here on the Civic Media Network, 9 to 11. Tune them in. Get the app. All the Patriots have it. Also, your Friday grievances. They're welcome here. Most of you are welcome anyways. Some of you are tolerated. You know who you are, CJ. 844-967-2789. Real quick. I see you, Rico. You're first in the queue. But I want to bring up a political point here from the great state of Wisconsin. Molly Beck reporting at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Wisconsin Parole Commission became a major, the decisions of the Wisconsin Parole Commission became a political flashpoint in 2022. Now, the Democratic governor here in the great state of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, has named a retired senator to lead it. And it's my guy, John Erpenbach from Middleton, where my family has resided for some time. John has been my senator for some time. I found him very responsive. John was a fixture. I've seen John all around town. But anyways, John has stepped down from the Wisconsin State Senate. And I think this is a great appointment because don't forget, this guy's got to make it through a Senate confirmation process. But let's tell you about his resume. Democratic Governor Tony Evers has appointed a recently retired Democratic state senator to lead the state's parole commission, decisions from which became a focus of Republicans' arguments against giving Evers another term in office. Well, hell, they had to make up something. Former State Senator John Erpenbach, Crudy's guy, a Democrat from West Point outside of Middleton, will serve as the chairman of the commission after 25 years in the state legislature. You're going to not confirm a guy you served with for something like a quarter century? Erpenbach's not qualified for this position. I want to hear how they rationalize it if they don't give him a quick upvote. Anyways, Erpenbach was a member of the legislature's powerful budget writing committee, which tackled issues related to incarceration. Here's what Erpenbach said in a statement. The Parole Commission plays an incredibly important role in our criminal justice system and in making sure that the system is just, fair, and constructive. The success of the commission depends on our ability to balance the law and public safety while supporting victims, survivors, and their families, and keeping dangerous individuals off our streets. It's that balanced, thoughtful approach I intend to take as chair. Erpenbach did not return calls to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Neither did Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu. Devin, you served with John. Is he qualified? I'm taking an early vacation this Friday. Anyways, a little bit more here. What do we got? No, that's basically it. The rest of it, less important, just sort of recapping Republicans using the issue of parole in the past.
Same old story. Oh, yeah.
Same old song and dance. 844-967-2789 at 8. The same old song and dance. It's Rico from Rock County. How you doing, fella?
Oh, doing just great. It's Friday, right? Hey, I got to tell you guys, I got this fresh off the press, brand new. I thought I'd light it up in here tonight. Hey, fresh off the press, never heard before. Dad joke. You're going to like it. You're going to love it.
It's a bad joke? Okay, and it's bad and it's new?
It's a dad joke.
Dad joke?
Dad joke. Never heard before. I got it.
Bad joke and dad jokes are sort of synonymous, aren't they, Rico?
Yeah, but I'm a grandpa, so I do have to admit that. Anyway, listen, here it is. Got it. Hey, I heard on the Matt Flynn show that the Taliban took over Missouri. You did, yeah. The first thing they did was took away their Second Amendment rights. They did, yeah. They no longer have the right to bear arms.
Ah, I see what you did there, Rico.
That's it.
Of course, the state of Missouri, I believe Republican lawmakers there said their female colleagues were subject to a differing dress code. They must wear sleeves. The female lawmakers must wear sleeves. And in Missouri, as is the custom, the male Republican lawmakers go sand sleeves, don't they, Rico? Sort of, wife beater style.
Yeah, normally.
Anything else other than bad joke here on a Friday afternoon, Rico?
Yeah. Did you ask me if I had something else?
Yeah,
No, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be on the greatest radio show. I love listening to Jim there. I check him out every Saturday morning. I called his show last week, too. He knows how I feel about the whole situation. There's the lack of charges and everything else. It's just, there's not even any more. Hey, you know what I take solace is? I just love this little, it's almost like sweet revenge. This Trump, every week, he's going to drop a new charge on us. It's like a never-ending movie. And then you got the Republican Party, it's disarray. Yeah, it's imploding on itself. And every day it's kind of, I take a little silence in that. I like it. I'm watching the show. I got to be optimistic, right? That's why I tell the jokes.
Rico, stay happy, my friend. Maybe, well, this is not great news, but it's Wisconsin-centric. I'll leave you with this thought for the week. GOP congressman displays Christian nationalist flag outside his congressional office. Everyone in your own mind, real quick, think, what Wisconsin congressman would have a white Christian national flag probably outside his congressional office? And if you thought Glenn Grothman, you'd be right.
More like Glenn Grossman, am I right?
The former president used to call him Grothman, to the point where I think he started calling himself Grothman, the Trumpiest of Trumpsters. U.S. Rep. Glenn Grothman has a Christian nationalist flag connected to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, displayed outside his congressional office. You make us so proud, Glenn. On Friday morning, Grothman, I almost called him Gableman, sort of similar dudes. Grothman posted a picture of the flag, which shows an image of a pine tree and the phrase, "An appeal to heaven" on a white background, to his Twitter account with a message inviting people to visit him in the Longworth House office building. With the 118th Congress underway, the People's House is finally reopened to the visitors. If you're in D.C., I encourage you to stop by my office and say hello. And the white flag with a pine tree and the phrase "Appeal to Heaven" is visible in the photo placed outside the door. Now, if you didn't know, that's sort of a white nationalist flag. The Appeal to Heaven flag, which was designed during the American Revolution and used by the Massachusetts Navy, is often associated with George Washington, but it's been appropriated by the white nationalists. Here's a quote. It's a reference to John Locke saying human beings can appeal to government, but at some point you have to appeal to heaven. You have to have a revolution and fight it out. There's a revolutionary, anti-democratic dimension to it. They're saying democracy isn't working, so we have to appeal to heaven for God's will to be done. White nationalist, Congressman Glenn Grothman, great state of Wisconsin. You make us so proud. Thank you all for listening to the Devil's Advocates. You're the real patriots. Stick around. Native Roots Radio's next. Hafman Brothers playing out in Madison right here on WTTN. Keep it locked. Civic Media. Have a great weekend. Go Badgers.
Get back to business and start the year strong with an HP printer from Staples, like the HP LaserJet MFP M234 SDWE printer. This compact multifunction printer features blazing fast print speeds. It's the fastest two-sided printer in its class. Plus, with the HP Smart app, you can print, scan, and copy from anywhere. And Staples has the best deals on a full range of HP printers. Right now, save up to $100 on the HP LaserJet. But hurry, this offer is good this week only. Offer good in-store and online. Ends 1/14.
Hey, Dom, how many palindromes can you name in 30 seconds?
Race car,